Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers. This morning I'm looking at a book from Routledge. It's in the beginner series. It's called Beginning Employment Law. There's a companion website to go with it. It's been written by James Marson. We've given it a title. My wife Elizabeth and I looked at the book and thought it was a very interesting area for people new to the subject. So we gave it the title, An Excellent First Step to Understand What Employment Law is All About. And I'll tell you about our review in a minute, but let's look at the book first. There's the front, the side, and then there's the back. Do look at the companion website. There's a little logo there. There's also one on the front, which actually assists you greatly. It's a light book, paperback, 170 pages. There's the index at the back, and then it gets into very basic information. There are nice diagrams. It is simple. It's designed to be simple and straightforward. There's no paragraph numbering or footnotes. You've got subheads which are very helpful all the way through. I mean, for instance, you've got notice periods for employers and employees. You've got case analysis. You've got various tables which are quite helpful in addition, and you've got all sorts of other basic information. There's chapter 3. You see how it starts with learning objectives. Then there's a little mind map, road map, whatever you want to call it, a little map to give you a picture of what you're going to be looking at. Then there's an introduction, there's some key definitions, and then you've got various sources. Then there's an on-the-spot question which will help you with a bit of self-testing, and I think that does help very much. This is the mission statement from Routledge for the beginning series. Then you've got the other titles in the current list. You've then got the main table of contents. There are quite a few. We just run through those. You can see there are quite a large number. The total number of topics covered are 10 in total. You've then got a table of some cases. Obviously it's not too heavy on case law. Table of legislation, also not too heavy because it's a beginner's book. Do read the preface written by James right at the beginning, which sets out what he wants, what his purpose is with the book. And then look at the companion website, which I think is very important because here it shows you what you actually need to do. Then you get into the book itself, and as I say, you have introductions and so forth. Then it leads into the topic itself. Now this is obviously a paperback. It's a paper version. The website is now a new innovation, and it's very helpful for everybody involved in this area of study. I think it's a very useful primer for anybody just wanting a general indication of how the law operates when we come to employment matters, because clearly with the changes that have taken place in the tribunals, the huge drop in the number of cases before the tribunals, mainly because of the costs now involved in it. People do need to know their rights, and we will be, I think, embarking in this century on public legal education in a much bigger way than we've done before, so that people are aware both of their rights and of what their obligations and responsibilities are. Anyway, let me tell you what we think of this book. James Marson explains in what we think is an excellent textbook on the subject of employment law, that the topic is vast, and he ably presents this basic primer in easy and understandable terms. And as with all the Routledge books, this particular one is probably the best on the market as a starter, and it tells you the way employment law operates in England and Wales for those who are new to the subject. It may be useful for trade unions and for certainly for employees to know where they might be going, because most of them have absolutely no idea of what their obligations and rights are, or in fact those of their employer. One of the main reasons why we like the Routledge books is because they're actually very reasonable. They're outstanding value both in terms of cost and content, and the way in which the authors, who are all legal experts, explain substantive law issues in a very readable fashion. And clearly James Marson does that with this particular topic. For both tutors, lecturers and learners, a decision on which textbook is always going to be a big one, but I think you're going to find that this is a useful one to start off with. certainly from the feedback we have received. Routledge does lead the field in many areas now, and this is as up to date as you're going to get. They were produced in the spring of 2014, and I'm recording this review in the autumn, for the beginning of the new term. Many of the titles have excellent links, and the companion website that I've mentioned is particularly important because it's merging both the paper textbook and the online sites with the various additional things that you can do when you're trying to get through this subject. I think that the format used by Routledge is also helpful. It fits in nicely with current teaching techniques, and the learning objectives and outcomes are always very important, so you can come away from this feeling that you've actually understood the basic components that make up employment law. I certainly find this sort of book very helpful for preparation if I'm doing an introductory course in employment law to people in the business community, for instance. Marson uses diagrams, tables and what he calls mind maps to make the subject come alive, and for us the companion website has been an innovation, because I do think that's a new very useful tool for teachers and students alike. Therefore, do look at all the features which are set out at the beginning of the book, which I showed you, which will assist you with the learning and the engagement with the subject matter, which I'm sure you'll find interesting. The key definitions and key cases are of particular help to those new to the subject, and the title remains an ideal first introduction to employment law. Let me just remind you, it's a light paperback book. It's not much, there's not much to it, because it's a primer, 160 odd pages. The back again, don't forget the companion website, have a good look at it. Just opening in the middle, contracts of employment, terms and sources. You can see the basics. There's quite a lot of content. There are lots of cases mentioned, which are always quite interesting as well. As I've indicated earlier, on-the-spot questions are also useful for a bit of self-testing. And, for instance, a statement of written particulars, always important when you're looking at the contract that you've entered into. You've also got a piece of information about employment tribunals themselves, if you have the unfortunate position of having to go there. But it does give you some very basic information, and I think what they've done here is they've got the balance just about right between the amount of law and content and trying to put it forward without going into the subject in a very, very heavy way and basically confusing an awful lot of people with what they might sort of get bogged down with by way of the detail of employment law itself. Anyway, thank you to Routledge and James Marson very much indeed for an excellent contribution to this subject area. Bye-bye.